How many of your friends have stolen someone's youth? A child masquerading as an adult, but a child in all senses of the word, at only 14 was introduced to something she knew nothing about. To be blinded early on by living and breathing monsters. I've been doing poetry since I was like 16. Actually, I took a class in high school once. It was Intro to Poetry. I had never done poetry ever. Like, I've made music, but never poetry. And the teacher Mr. Lyle, he was amazing. He told me everything there was to know about poetry. How it could be a diary and how it could really just get you from one spot to another. I don't know, it just became my thing.
I read somewhere once that black women's bodies were not rehabilitation centers for broken men, but then again, I've been rehabbing y'all since I was 10, even without my consent.
So when I was about 10, I had this teacher. This is why teachers are so important. She was an artist. She wrote poetry, and at the end of every class, like maybe 30 minutes before class would end, she'd move all the desks out the way, and we'd put on performances because she felt that, you know, the arts was so important. So she taught us all about like Langston Hughes. So 10-year-old me doing, you know, Mother to Son by Langston Hughes and stuff. And my love of poetry started there. And then it just never stopped.
Because bars be like ones that come with shots, rounds, and last calls, always top shelf. They ask how I got here. I said I got help from homies and higher self. I'm the business and
I've been writing poetry since I was like 12 years old. And also people, I kind of feel like a fish out of water when it comes to poetry because like what kind of inspired me to write poetry was like, not poetry in its traditional sense of like what we think about with like Robert Frost or Shakespeare. Like I haven't really read any of their poems. I couldn't even remind you like what poem was what, but Nas was like the first quote unquote poet that inspired me to write poetry. Like Nas, Missy Elliott, Ludacris, like Busta Rhymes, like dudes who were like rappers and like females who were rappers too, kind of influenced me to write poetry because at the time like I thought it was dope, but then I didn't think I could rap, so I kind of stuck with just poetry and keeping it to myself for 13 years. And it wasn't until like I was 25 that I found out about the art of spoken word poetry and started jumping into that and kind of exercising art through that kind of context. So I've been doing it for a while.
Cause bars be like underworld, but underground. I'm over heads, they under now. Don't understand, I'm over town. What's a king to a god? They can have a throne, I'm over crowns. Not bothered by a person, place, or thing. It's like I'm over nouns. Crowd watches you when you spit like, is it over now? They marvel at metaphors, wishing that bars would be like, but they can never be like because bars be like that.
I think when people first encounter you, you know, they have their own perceptions of who you are. Or when people are going through things, they feel like maybe you don't know what I'm going through, like you don't understand. And I think when I actually recite and I'm up there, I feel like I'm able to show them different and show them like, look, I've been through a lot of similar things and I'm up here, like, and I'm reciting. So I think that that's what I like to convey.
In general, art's kind of like that. Art's kind of like this force that kind of like allows the creator to kind of like understand themselves more. So I think like being that person who, as a kid who didn't really know how to like voice certain thoughts and ask questions, like I did that through art. So kind of art was like me kind of talking to myself and figuring things out. So art's kind of been that kind of force where I tell people all the time, like if there's ever like a day where I don't do art like as a career, like art's still going to be useful in the sense of like I got to know, it's allowed me to like really know myself and know my roots and really understand where I come from and all that. So it's definitely been something that kind of has helped me kind of like understand my identity as like as a person and as somebody like who's Black and what that kind of comes with as a narrative. So it's definitely been a force that kind of helps with that understanding myself.
Normally whenever I'm going through something, like I have depression and BPD, so whenever I'm like feeling emotions very like highly, I normally write. But whenever I do write, it's like I'm putting that emotion underneath a microscope and I'm finna dive into it, even if I don't want to. Like, it's like self-discovery and it sucks.
I've been through a lot of traumas. And a lot of times I went through a lot of traumas by myself. So just writing it out, I was able to process those traumas and, you know, be a sort of an ear for other people, because when I began to share, you know, that's where the human connection comes in, because I come to find out I'm not alone in this, in the things that I've been through.
Suicide is murdering my kind. I didn't get into spoken word until like 3 years after I was actually doing poetry. Even though my teacher was like, poetry is meant to be spoken, like I still just wasn't comfortable with my voice, and I don't know, it's just a lot attached to it. But when I did do it, it was relieving, to say the least. It was nice. I never knew voicing my own words, my own poetry like that would have that effect on me or other people. Like, it was nice to see it.
But every time you
I think the performing of the pieces are a lot more empowering. So writing it out is like the healing process in that, but then kind of shouting it out and getting it out. If you would think about like maybe going to one of those buildings where you smash and break things and like there's healing in that. That's what it feels like sometimes when I leave it on the stage, you know, and then that's where I get the human connection, because it's like, oh my gosh, I've went through that, you know.
Just be glad my actions only go as far as paper and pen.
It's just such a different feel, you know. It feels good. It almost feels like a letting go, but also a grasping onto also, because like you're allowing something bigger than you to kind of like share the narratives that you're kind of like spitting. So it's definitely different from just writing something on a page and have people kind of like look at it and get their own thing from it, which is also useful. But like when you actually perform, there's just such an energy behind it, you know.
That time turntables took 22 teens torturing till tummies tumbled to terror. Or when the Fugees wrote a track so violent that it literally took folks and started killing them softly. Or you can't have forgot when Run DMC's track left the 16 backs of 16 blacks on the curve whacked, it'd be the rap. I mean, Fox News.
We kind of live sometimes when we go through things in this cloak of like victimhood in a sense. And I feel like when you're able to get it out like that, it's like you take your power back. And I think there's a lot of activism in that. Like just taking your power back and owning what you've been through and like still rocking it out. Like that didn't stop me. Like I'm still here. So.
Yeah. Cool with the feet? Cool with it? Okay, cool. Hey, you guys gotta say go off door, go off door, go off door, go off door. Hey.
It's definitely made me like more connected to like people who do art, you know, like with like my roots being kind of like in rap and battle rap culture. Like I found inspiration with those homies, honestly, the most, which I think is fitting again, because like those are aesthetics that are kind of like predominantly black. So like though we're doing different like art forms in a sense, like they still understand it enough to like where we have dope conversations, where we have like dope contributions to each other's art. As poetry is, and I speak for this part of the Midwest, I guess specifically, it's still kind of like one of those arts where like you don't find a lot of black people and kind of like doing it. And and not to say you can't find a connection with people out of that, but like there's still something said that like when somebody gets your narrative and all that, you find a little more connection with it. So
you meet a lot of creatives, and I think that's really beautiful, especially being a person of color and meeting other creatives that are of color. Like it's just, it feels like family. And some of us haven't really had that. It's that family kind of bond.
Poetry found me in like when I needed it, like in a time in my life where I don't know, I was just angry a lot. Sisters, friends are losing their lives. Parents are burying their child. I don't know, like poetry gave me the footing I needed. It led me to doing so much other stuff. Like, I don't know, poetry is just like the most beautiful art to me.
I am him.
As a creative, I want my art to do just that. Allow people to kind of be provoked in thought, provoked in feelings, to look at things differently, and also look at creativity differently as well. You know, just being able to look at like how you can blend creativity with certain aesthetics and still make it work and still make it like something that's like black and creative, you know? So that's definitely something that I aspire to do with my art.
I hope that my poetry, or poetry in particular, helps people find their light, their voice, their place. I hope it reaches people in a sense that they find out that they're not alone. That we all go through things and you can still come back from it. So when I'm performing or when I'm putting my writing out there, it's just to empower those that may not be in the space that I am right now, but they may be where I've been. And I just want to help them along the way.